first of all, let me say that the reforms we consider they are work in progress because it's a journey, and we are just 2 years into that journey. And of course, there are multiple objectives, one of which you mentioned, the structural objectives. We have the macroeconomic objectives. We have development objectives. Of course, we have the welfare objectives, which the common people always talk about. So far, we have made some remarkable progress in terms of correcting some fundamental distortions in the economy. And that has brought some level of improvement, to the macroeconomic space. That is why we have been seeing some, stability here and there. Prices are stable, inflation is moderating, and so on. So at the macroeconomic level, some progress has been made. But at the level of, the structural level, in terms of what exactly you need to make the economy very competitive, very efficient, and all of that, and even more equitable, we haven't achieved so much in terms of productivity in the economy. And that we can also see how that is affecting operating costs, competitiveness, export competitiveness, and so on. And in the area of welfare, there is still a major disconnect between what we have achieved at the macro level and what the impact has been on the lives of the people. That's a major issue that the government is still trying to struggle with. So generally, I will say that progress has been made. The entire reform is a journey, but there is still a lot more to do, to ensure that we make much more progress on all critical fronts.
Despite the rebased GDP, as it were, we still see that the Naira in itself has depreciated over 70% since mid-2023. Now, dropping Nigeria's ranking, as it were, to, I think, it's the 4th in Africa now. Is this decline driven mainly by oil dependency, or are we still looking at a case of institutional deficiencies, or fiscal imbalances, or even the weak currency policy more to blame for the Naira's dramatic downfall?
Instead of concentrating on our consumption, production, exports, and so we concentrated on the banking sector. We are now creating banks and banks and banks. People who doesn't know anything about banks, you find themselves as the manager. And we knew what happened. The result of what happened today started from that SAP. Not because SAP was bad, but because we mismanaged it. That's one thing. Now, what happens now is that we have left that era. The era we are now is what we call era of shocks. Every small thing that happens anywhere touches you. And if you are not prepared, you find yourself where you don't want. Now, what I think people should do, particularly those who are in charge, let's look for the enabling policy before you utter anything. Why am I saying this? The small statement made by the president the day he's taking power, subsidy is gone. That's what brought us to where we are. Everybody will tell you, yeah, remove subsidy. But as an economist, you must plan for what will happen. If I take this policy, who will be the gainers? Who will be the losers? What will I do to help those who lose? What will I do to those who are making more money than others? Those are the things we didn't do. And that is what brought us to this stage, because this is an economy that depends on energy. Energy is there's nobody who does not use energy. And so once it is done, everybody is being affected, mostly negatively. But if I bring that to what is happening again, is the fact that when you talk, people will say, Nigeria is doing fine. After all, devaluation. No. What is devaluation? It's a price. And what is the price? It's the price of your currency. It was used essentially by the British in those days to make sure they sell to every other part of the world, since they are the hegemonies, or what do you call it, in those days. And now, that one favors countries who can produce goods and services. But you ask me, what are we producing? If you remove crude oil, nothing remains.
There must be plans put in place, therefore, to then achieve this dream. And one of those plans was the recapitalization of the banking sector. So to answer that specific question particularly, is it required, was it relevant? Yes. $1 trillion, not naira, dollar economy means multiples of growth in the economy. And therefore, you needed a financial system, obviously powered by banking sector, in our case, that were big enough to be able to absorb the sizes of the transactions that would take us to the $1 trillion economy. You needed financial institutions that were financially stable to be able to absorb the kind of risk that comes with the multiplicity of the growth that we want to achieve to arrive at $1 trillion. So the banking capitalization, perhaps, yes, needed, and we needed to go there. But linking that, obviously, with the objective, which is, I say the end point of the objective, which talks about funding for SMEs and the likes. It's a whole journey, because risk and SMEs are not synonymous, unfortunately. If I think of where banking has, I'm just imagining that a lot of that funding is going to be very, very risk averse, as should be. But as I said, the $1 trillion economy is a dream. And therefore, the policies and the infrastructures, frameworks, basically the whole system, a whole system needs to be implemented to be able to ensure that the banking sector and the financial system, because I believe even after the banks capitalize, the other sectors are going to need to capitalize as well, are able to take their large balance sheets and able to cascade it down to the SMEs. And there's a whole lot of reform that is required to do that. So is it possible? Absolutely, yes. We read research, we look globally. The US economy, for example, is 60 to 70% driven by LLCs, small companies. That's the backbone of that economy. And that's why there's some resilience to that extent there. So if we want to achieve the same thing here, there's a whole plethora of reforms that need to happen. If I just take a minute to talk about one or two. What's the risk to lending to SMEs?
There's a maxim in law that says res ipsa loquitur. That means this fact speaks for itself. And that is the simple way in which I'm going to answer that question. Because it's obvious that almost every youth are content creators now. So you see them all over the social media pages, platforms, TikTok, Instagrams, X, Facebook and all. They create content. And in that way, they're getting employed. In that way, they're getting busy, And that was why I started answering this question by that maxim. It's obvious, So if we now have policies regulating and guiding this kind of, particular act of these youths, the major youths, I can tell you that it goes a long way to increase or decrease, affect or damage the economy of Nigeria. You understand? So we have no doubt that youth cannot be stopped from doing what they like to do. Don't forget that what is more important in our industry is passion. And passion drives us. So at the beginning of it, most of us, even these youths, just enjoy doing what they're doing, not even thinking about the financial, gains that comes from it. So when passion drives you, you now get into the financial aspect. And you now feel more comfortable.